Hello, everybody.
Welcome, y'all.
You ready, honey?
I'm ready.
All right.
What are we doing?
Well, first, I want to
We're on
welcome you all
YouTube.
here.
Oh my gosh, we're live.
Thanks for joining us for Weeknight Workshop.
Hi,
And
everyone.
tonight I'm
Hi,
John
everyone.
Paul Clark.
And I'm Mrs. Clark.
Tonight, we tackle the big topic: what is wholesaling and how do you do it?
Exactly.
So, Blair, can you tell them what is wholesaling all about?
All right. What it is. Let's define it. Let's define wholesaling first. All right, I got my notes in front of me. I'm good. So, wholesaling is cool. It is known as a short term investment strategy because you're only in the wholesale deal for a short period of time. Okay. With wholesale as a real estate investing strategy, you aren't actually the person who ends up purchasing the property. You're more in the business of what's called contract assignments. So, what a contract assignment is you put somebody under contract and then you assign that contract over to a different person, like a third party, right? So, in real estate contract assignments, which is the fancy way for saying wholesaling, you enter into a purchase and sales agreement with a seller, just call it a purchase agreement. But then you aren't actually the person who purchases the property. You then assign that contract over to what we just refer to as the end buyer. Okay. And then the end buyer is the one who actually takes the contract to the closing table. They have to fulfill all of the terms, the price points, the obligations, etc., that was in that original contract. And what you're doing really here is you are the wholesaler. Stop kicking the tripod, John
Sorry.
Paul.
Adjusting.
You are assigning the contract and receiving a fee for that. So that's called you are assigning your equitable interest. So you have an interest in the equity of the property when you put that property under contract. And so your assignment fee, otherwise known as the wholesale fee, is the price that you charge the buyer, not the seller, for assigning that contract over to them. And what we have learned is the better the deal you can put together as a wholesaler, the higher you can negotiate with the buyer, the bigger your
Hmm.
assignment fee can be in the end. And so, like I said, the assignment fee does not come out of the seller's proceeds. It's the buyer that ends up paying that assignment fee. And when this is done ethically, correctly, skillfully, this can be a great venture for all parties involved.
Okay, so as you can tell, Blair's very knowledgeable and smart. Okay?
Smart.
All right.
SMRT.
So you're going to want to watch this again later, take some notes because everything we're telling you and teaching you, we paid for the content to learn all of this stuff. A lot of this is not free out there things. Well, I guess it is now because we're giving it all to you. Okay. So, I'm a visual learner. So, I brought some visual aids for tonight. So, I'm going to explain to you how it works. So, if Blair can move her head out of the way for a second, back behind me, we have on here a little visual
I'll do your Vanna.
demonstration. Okay. So we have a seller, a wholesaler, and a cash buyer. All right. So here's how the process works: the seller or the wholesaler goes scouring for deals. They're looking for distressed properties or distressed people who want to sell their home quickly
It's true.
for cash. For cash. All right. So they go to them, they negotiate the terms for what's called a purchase agreement. This purchase agreement, once signed, solidifies how much the seller is going to sell for, and then also puts a binding contract on the property that the wholesaler then takes to their private money buyers, they're investors. Okay. So they're not, a wholesaler's not going to take this to a realtor. They're not going to take it to an on market deal or to a residential home buyer. They're going to take it to someone who's got the cash to close and close quickly. All right. So then they sign what's called an assignment contract. Then, once all documents have been signed, there is the final closing where buyer purchases property from seller and the wholesaler gets their assignment fee. So that's the whole process beginning to end.
Yeah, so
So,
our kiddos were in here. This is my office slash wholesale room, and John Paul drew this lovely visual aid last night. And our kids came in here and they were like, what is it? We want to draw pictures.
So I just I need to see things sometimes. I thought it would help you out. But
Very
Blair,
artistic.
you're you're welcome. You're all welcome. Blair, I've got a big question for you.
Okay.
Okay. So if a seller wants to sell their property and a buyer wants to buy their property, why in the world would they need a wholesaler? Why doesn't seller and buyer just interact and transact without the wholesaler?
Very good question. And I think that would be the same question that people might ask of why do I even need a real estate agent if I want to list my home for sale? So the house that we live in right now, if we were going to list it for sale and we didn't use a real estate agent, we would have to do something called for sale by owner, which is absolutely what someone can do if they do not desire to list it on the market. If they just want a quick cash sale with an investor, they can absolutely go and do that. But I think communication, where to even find people. I mean, it's not like we have a distressed seller, real estate investor, mixer. There might be like a Tinder for that. I don't really know. Or some sort of chat room that I don't know about. If do people do chat rooms
No,
still?
maybe.
The deep dark web. But anyway, so the majority of sellers do not know how to find investors to purchase their property, and they might not even have any idea like what to do in regard to that. So it's sort of like, why would you hire a real estate agent? Well, you need somebody to come in, somebody with that skill set of this is how I will connect you with the person that can solve your problem, which is purchase your property. And then also because there is no cost to the seller, there'd be no reason for the seller to not want to do that. The wholesaler is coming in and doing all of those things, and the fee that they're taking isn't coming off the seller proceeds. So there's really no reason for the seller to not do that. The only thing is most sellers don't even know, they don't even have an awareness that this is a strategy, a transaction that even takes place. So a lot of sellers just sit in their anguish and in their misery with this property or with this problem. It's not always a distressed property. Sometimes people have a problem and they need to throw some money at it to solve it. And they have a property, they have, an asset that they can sell, but they got to sell it like next week, which doesn't usually happen in the typical standard real estate transaction. There's, protocol and time, et cetera. And so these deals are a little bit different. So I think I pretty much just proved that wholesaling is a super valuable skill set within the real estate investing space. Because as I said earlier, if you do this ethically, correctly, skillfully, like I just said the word ethically, you are not only a problem solver, but you are an answer to prayer for the praying folk out there. And wholesalers bring immense value, like I just described. We'll talk about the sellers first. So they bring value to the sellers, they bring value to the buyer, but in regard to the seller, they help sellers to get paid quickly and to get that cash smoothly, to get that closing smoothly. So in a typical scenario, when someone is purchasing a home, let's just take like the average home buyer's situation where they qualify for financing and then they find a real estate agent and then they find a home that they like and they put in an offer and then they have to wait for the bank to give their blessing and sign off on the go ahead to finance. And so we have had situations where we've had our flip houses and they were listed and we were selling them, and there was a buyer who came and wanted the house so badly, and we got locked into the contract with that buyer, and then their financing falls through. And then we had to go back to the drawing board, back to square one, and start back over again and find another buyer. It's really not that big of a deal when you're not in a hurry, but when you're in a hurry, man, like that could kill whatever it is that you are trying to achieve with that money that you need. So typically a wholesaler is going to bring an experienced cash buyer investor they're typically going to work with an experienced title company that does investment deals like this. And they're not going to work with banks, which means you eliminate the hassle of bank appraisals, having to deal with underwriters, who those are the people who really give the blessing on whether or not it can be financeable. And then you don't have to deal with inspections, like, and not just the property inspector, like the home inspector that home buyers hire, but I'm also talking about city inspections. Sometimes these properties are not habitable, and in order for you to sell them to, average Joe home buyer, you have to get what's called a certificate of occupancy, which means the city's got to give its blessing on the property. But if you're doing a cash deal to an investor who's not going to occupy the house, you don't have to worry about any of that. So they just really can make things go smoothly and quickly for the sellers. And then there's more value too. I'm going to have you talk about a lot of the things. So that's like what the wholesaler can do for the seller, but here's all the stuff that the seller then does not have to do. So talk about that.
Yes, and we've purchased from wholesalers. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. And when we do that as cash buyers, when we go in there, we tell the sellers, leave everything. If you want that furniture to stay, if you want everything in the garage to stay in the basement, leave it all. Leave the mess. We'll take care of it. So now that seller doesn't have to stress over hiring a moving company, or hiring able-bodied people to lift heavy equipment or heavy items out of their home. They also don't have to go out and try to find buyers. They don't have to market their own property. They don't have to worry about all the appraisals and inspections that can derail a purchase like that. So it's the stress just alleviates all of that. Okay. And the biggest thing, most importantly, they don't have to wait around for weeks and weeks to get the proceeds for the deal. Usually, those transactions, wholesale deals, and closings happen in like record timing as opposed to a traditional closing with a bank and title company. So, I also want to talk to you a little bit about the buyers. And so, as people who buy from wholesalers, this is what wholesalers do for us, bring to us. Okay. The two big things: saves time, saves money. So with the time part of it, like when we're working on a property, it's consuming our energy, it's consuming our focus. We're managing the project. We don't have the time to go out and to search for these properties, to speak with dozens of sellers, and to like negotiate terms and prices. We don't have time for that. So we would much prefer a wholesaler handle all that and just send us the deal.
Right.
All right. So it saves us all that time of haggling, negotiating, and finding the deals, number one. And it saves us the money uh, that we would have to put into all of those things: lead generation and marketing. That's all that stuff, sending out mailers, that all takes time.
Phone
And
calls.
cold calls,
The
the worst.
worst. The worst.
Okay. We are not salespeople. We're not good at that. That is not our strength. So we love it when a wholesaler takes care of that and saves us that time, energy, and money for sure.
Yeah, so I want to touch base with a question in the chat that is how did you even learn about wholesaling? Because I've never heard of it. So we're going to talk about that in just a little bit here. Well, we can just jump into it right now. Yeah, let's just talk about it right now. So we made a video last week that talked about coaching. We hired a coach to teach us the art of wholesaling. And so if somebody out there's listening and you've been thinking about real estate coaching, is it for you? Is it worth it, etc.? We'll tag the link to that video in the description below. In fact, I think it's already there, so you guys can just click on it whenever after you're done with this video, obviously. So you can learn all about that there. But we learned about wholesaling specifically through our coach, but how we even learned of the concept in the first place. So, how we even knew to hire a coach that specialized in wholesaling was we went to a real estate investing seminar when we were brand new noobs in the real estate investing space. We had done a few deals, but we wanted to learn more. And at that seminar, they taught on a ton of different strategies that are out there that we didn't even know existed, and wholesaling was one of them. And so when we left that conference seminar, we really felt like wholesaling was for us at that point in time in our lives. Like, and we even thought that we were going to be wholesalers forever.
Oh,
Like
yes.
forever, we were going to be wholesalers, because it totally fit who we were at that point in time. So, for example, we at that point in time had pretty much no startup capital. We had a little bit of money, but certainly not even a fraction of what it would cost to purchase an entire property and then fix it, right? The cost on that. So we didn't have very much startup money. We also didn't have any connections with the people who had the money, right? So we just looked at that as this is a strategy for people who are broke who can get into it. The other thing that they taught was you can actually get lump sums of cash in a pretty quick turnaround. So if you really hustle, you can be making some money like every couple of weeks, and it's like really decent, really decent payouts. And then the other thing, we made a couple of videos a couple of weeks ago about how we used to live in our investment properties. Um, and the bonus with wholesaling is we wouldn't have to live in it. We wouldn't have to live in the property, and then we also wouldn't have to work on the property, which at that point in time we thought that we didn't
Oh,
want. We thought we didn't want to work in the property.
no.
But like we had a baby, we had a toddler, we were tired. So the thought of working on another property after we had just finished the one that we had finished was exhausting. So, really, the main takeaway I would say to the person that asked that question was the main takeaway that seminar taught us about wholesaling was if you don't have any money, but you do have time and you're willing to hustle, wholesaling would be a good place for you to start. Okay. So at that point in time in our lives, we were living in our duplex that we were house hacking, which house hacking meant I didn't have to go to work. So besides from being home with our babies, I had a lot of time. I had a lot of time to learn the steps and processes. I had a lot of time to implement the steps and processes. And this was basically something that I could do during nap time or get up early in the morning, stay up late at night and work on it. And it really sounded like the best side hustle I had ever heard of in my entire life, because prior to this, my side hustle was I was in an MLM, multi-level marketing, selling fitness products for a really good company. However, I was so bad at it, I was making like dollars, right? So this payoff, wholesaling's payoff sounded way better than that.
So Blair and I are both teachers. When we are learning something new, we don't wing it. We don't take chances.
We do it right.
If we're gonna do something, we're gonna go all in on it. Okay. So all we knew that wholesaling was the thing that we needed to do, but we knew also that we didn't possess the skills and knowledge to do it right and to do it right away. Like we needed to jump in this fast to start generating that income. So we do what you do in that situation. You find an expert, you hire them, they train you, they teach you, and then you're off to the races. So we did that, and it worked out really well. This coach, like, and we covered this all in the video last week, so I definitely won't go too far into it. But they taught us what to look out for. They In that video we cover what our coach offered us, how much we paid that person to do the work for us to help us out, and how it worked for us. So all of that, definitely check it out, because our first deal, our first wholesale deal that we did, netted us $20,000. Okay. So that was, we didn't buy and flip a property. We simply found a seller, motivated seller, found a buyer, transacted it for a fee, and made ourselves $20,000. All right. And so to give you context to it, on average, and this is what they taught us at the seminar, wholesalers will make anywhere from 5 to 10 typically in a wholesale deal.
Mm.
All right. So that blew it out of the water right out the gate. So we wouldn't have done that. We're both very conservative people. We also don't know, back when we first started, we didn't know the numbers as well. We needed a coach who was experienced in that, who pushed us to get a better and better deal, and that we wouldn't have otherwise have done. So yes, paying that coach a ton of money was worth it because we made a ton plus on it.
Yeah, right on. And like when I think about everything that it took, so when I described what we did to somebody after we did it, their response to that was, "You sold a piece of paper for $20,000?" And I said, "No. I sold a couple of months and like tens and tens and tens and tens and tens, which I guess adds up to hundreds of hours of my life for $20,000." And what I mean by that is, so all of the time and effort and energy and money spent on attending these seminars and coaching and learning and watching his videos and hopping on calls with him, etc. And then also all of the time implementing everything that it took in order to get that signed contract from a willing, awesome, the guy was awesome, seller in hand. So there were a lot of steps and skills and processes that led up to that $20,000 wholesale deal. So if you think about it, like, if it took us 3 months to acquire it, then that's like 1/4 of the year. So that's 1/4 of somebody's salary. We both have college degrees. So that's really not that big of a deal. But if you're wondering, what are the things that I need to learn before I can successfully wholesale? Well, let me just tell you. Let me run down my little list here. Really, I'll just go in the order of the things that you need to do. The first thing is lead generation. So lead generation is when you find the people who are willing to do business with you, whatever business that it is. So in our market, in real estate, if you are in the market or you're in the business of buying houses, you have to find what's called motivated sellers, people who are motivated to sell to you. If you're an investor and you actually want to make money, you need to find people who are motivated to sell at a discount to you. So you need to learn how to find those people in the first place, and then how to get your message of, "I want to buy your house," in front of them, which leads into the next step of marketing. Marketing is, how am I going to get my message in front of my audience? Mailers, phone calls, billboards, which we didn't do because we're not ballers, but radio ads, if those still exist, Facebook ads, newspaper ads, Craigslist, etc. So where are your motivated sellers and how do you get your message in front of them? Negotiations. You got to be able to negotiate with the seller, and get them what it is that they need in order to say yes to you. And then you need to negotiate with the buyer so that you can get the fee that you deserve for bringing this awesome deal. And then all of the contracts, like what types of contracts, what types of documents, how do I even, find or have a conversation with an attorney to help me draft all of these things. Deal analysis, which is a huge one that we see wholesalers, no offense to the wholesalers that we've passed on your deals, but the reason why is because you aren't skillful in deal analysis. And what I mean by that is you really have to know the market, and you have to know the value and the proper pricing of the properties that you're putting under contract. So for example, if a house is worth this, but you're trying to sell it to me for this, I'm not buying it because I can't sell it for more than what it's worth, right? In the real estate market, there is a ceiling on the value of your home. And then also wholesalers really need to be able to assess a property and put together an adequate estimation of what will be the renovation costs, so that you, the end buyer, can do that simple subtraction problem of, this is what the house will be worth once it's remodeled and I sell it, minus the cost that it's going to take me to repair it, right? and then all of the fees in between. So you really have to understand how to run your numbers is another way of saying deal analysis. And then you have to build a network of investors. If you don't know them personally, that's fine. If you don't have a personal contact list, like your little black book of real estate investors, that's fine. But you do need to know where to find them and what groups they're in. You have to find title companies that will work with you because not everybody wants to. You got to do transaction coordination, get the whole thing from start to finish. So there's a lot.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of moving parts. So our first wholesale deal, if I were to describe it, I would say it was just very textbook, very standard. So we found a person who had inherited a property, and the property was just in really bad shape, but it was in a great neighborhood in a desirable city in our area. But this gentleman did not have the time or the ability or the money or the interest to fix this house up to make it marketable or even make it habitable, because the city was going to have to come in and certify it before somebody could move in. So we negotiated a sales price with him that made him happy, met his needs. And then the very next day, we started marketing that contract out to different networks of investors. So some people we reached out to personally. We posted it on Facebook. We put it on Craigslist. Craigslist is actually where the buyer came from. I don't use Craigslist anymore, but this guy did. And so the buyer, when we were negotiating with him, he was more than happy to pay us that $20,000 fee because we were handing him the rights to purchase this great house in this great neighborhood for a great deal. And everything was great. I'm like overusing the word great, but it was great. Everybody was happy. So at the end of the day, the seller got that burden off his back. The buyer got a great deal. He was going to flip the house. And then we did our first official off-market deal. We were flying high. We were legitimate real estate investors. We felt like big dogs. But then we sort of laughed because that was our first wholesale deal, but it also ended up being our last. So I'm gonna have you talk about why that was the only one we ever did.
Okay, so it might sound silly because we just were touting how great everything was and how successful it went for us.
And it still is.
And everything is great about it. The problem wasn't wholesaling. The problem was us. It's not you. It's me. Okay.
I invented. It's not you.
So what we did, and this is something I recommend every person does at different crossroads in your life. At this point in the game, Blair and I had successfully did live and flip, did a house hack with a rental, and now we'd successfully wholesaled. So after all that, all the dust had settled, and we sat back and we were like analyzing everything that we have been going through. We asked ourselves a very important question. We reflected on what is the best avenue for us. What is the thing that we wake up in the morning excited about, the thing that we have passion for, all right? And after all that was done, we realized it wasn't wholesaling. Wholesaling was good, and we learned some great tools from it, but we weren't excited about that. Right. We loved two things. We loved the transformation process and the big payouts. And those didn't come from wholesaling. Those came from flipping houses. Right. When we first got started, we would walk through these just beat up, nasty, smelly, gross houses. And we'd go through these properties, and most people would be just totally turned off to it. We just got excited. Like the dirtier, the smellier, the more charred wood from a house fire, the more flooded basements, the better. All right. So we got so excited about that because we knew that once we got it in our hands and we got to work on it, months later, that was going to be someone's brand new, beautiful home. Okay, so we would walk in to the worst case scenario and we'd walk out of it months later to a beautiful new home. That got us excited.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, we are all about wholesalers and wholesaling. So we told you that our only wholesale deal netted us 20,000. Okay. We just bought a house at the recording of this video 1 week ago from a great wholesaler. Yep. Just handled everything for us. So smooth. Uh, the closing, we went from under contract to owning the home
in 5 days.
like unreal. Okay. That doesn't happen in any real estate markets. Okay.
Never even met the seller, like didn't have to do anything.
Yep. Yep. The wholesaler handled all the transaction from start to finish. So with that wholesaler netted $20,000. That was the fee for the deal that we just did. And we were glad that they did that. We were glad because
So happy to pay it.
because we didn't have to do all of the searching, digging, negotiating, all that work. All we had to do was sign on the dotted line and cut them a check at the closing. And so we are all about that wholesaling life for others, not for us.
No, right on. So if you are watching this, whether it is live or the replay, and you are a wholesaler and you have a great deal in the Metro Detroit area, call me. Call me, okay? So one of the things that we've talked about is that God is really a God of restoration. And so John Paul and I try to approach as much as we can. We're not perfect, but as much as we can from biblical platforms and principles. And so I feel like even though house flipping can be nitty gritty and man, it sure can be like gruelingly tough work at times. We enjoy restoring properties. We do.
Yeah.
We do. And I feel like that's just because, we follow the biblical principles. God is a God of restoration. Therefore, it is innately inside of all of us to restore things, right? We love the HGTV makeover and reveal. We flip a house in 24 minutes, minus commercial breaks, right? But no, we really enjoy it. And John Paul and I were having a conversation just earlier today. He made a connection that we have never made, that we were destined to be house flippers because the first house that we ever bought after we were married was a flip house. And we actually met the rehabber, the flipper, the investor. Our realtor knew him, connected us with him because we were his buyers. And he had only owned the property for about a week. And he had bought that property from a wholesaler. And that wholesaler is actually somebody that we now know and love and trust. He's a great guy. But what's so funny is we didn't really know that at the time, but we walked through that house. This investor had only owned it for a week. They hadn't started work to it. He walked us through the house and he was like showing us around and he's like, because it was nasty and junky and they had painted the cabinets purple. And there was just like skid marks on the carpet and random stuff everywhere. And we walked through this house and we were like, it's perfect. We'll take it.
No issue.
And signed the contract,
Yep.
but then waited the 3 to 4 months while his crew renovated it. And when it was all said and done, it was beautiful. They took everything out and rehabbed everything, like absolutely perfect. But the connection that John Paul made earlier was like, even though we were just like these, little wide-eyed 20-something-year-olds just newly married,
First-time home
buyers, we still had that vision.
Yep.
We still had that vision. We could see the end product, right? So I thought that was cool. You made that connection earlier today, right? So yeah, we didn't make wholesaling our main strategy. And, I know a lot of people, especially if you watched our video from last week on coaching, you're going to just laugh and say like, so you went through all of that coaching and you did the thing one time and then you just stopped. Y'all are a bunch of quitters. So it's like, no,
Nope.
the coaching was not for naught, right? If I'm saying that correctly. The end game of what our coach taught us was wholesale the house, right? But everything that led up to, okay, now you've got the house under contract. What are you going to do with it? You could wholesale it. You could close on it and flip it. You could close on it and turn around and sell it to somebody else. You could close on it and hold it as a rental. There's so many things you can do once you have that investment property under contract, it's everything leading up to finding that investment property. Really, what coaching taught us, what our coach taught us, was the priceless, invaluable skill
Yes.
called finding off market deals and negotiating for killer prices.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge, huge portion, right, of anything that you do with a property. If you're a landlord, you want to make money. The more cash flow you make for the less that you pay for it, right? If you're a house flipper, you want to make money. Whatever it is, you want to get that property for the best price that you can. The more properties you acquire, the more business you do, the more money you make. So the faster you can find them, the better. So that was a huge, huge piece to the house flipping puzzle. But then we also had a pretty huge problem of, well, we still don't have the money. Like a $20,000 assignment fee is great, but that buys like a fifth of a house in Metro Detroit. If you're in California, that buys like, I don't know, a 50th of a house.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the money ourselves. We didn't have some rich uncle, you know what I mean? Like I said earlier, to foot the bill. So we had to kind of circle back to the things that we learned in that real estate investing seminar I referenced earlier. Go back to that drawing board and say, okay, we need to now implement this other strategy that they taught us at the seminar. And that is called partnering with private money lenders. All right. Basically what you do is you find an individual with a stash of cash, and then they fund your deal. So it's not the bank, it's not your money, it's somebody else's money. And that seemed really intimidating to us at first. How do you even pose this question to somebody like, hey, can I have tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to just, go buy this house over here? But we knew that if we wanted to be serious big boy and girl real estate investors, we were going to have to just swallow our fear and figure out how to do this. And also, if we wanted to be able to flip more than one house at a time without having to live in it while we flipped it, we were just going to have to figure out how to make this work. And so, as you guys probably have guessed, all these years later, of course, we figured out how to make that work. And then so to date, at the time of this recording, we have been able to leverage almost $2 million of other people's money, private money, that is not tied in any type of way to bank financing. And that's been pretty cool.
So the biggest thing, if I can give you any advice here, is that you need to get into, if you want to do this, you need to get into bigger circles.
Yes, grow.
You need to get around people who are shakers and movers. You need to find where they meet and go introduce yourself, okay? And it's definitely awkward. It's definitely intimidating at first, but in time, you will grow in that process.
Yes, you rise to the level of the room that you're in. For sure, you rise to it.
Like a goldfish in a fishbowl. So it's a good analogy. Look it up. And if you didn't guess it by now, what Blair just told you about finding private money and other people's money, using it for investing, we learned how to do it. So we're going to teach you how to do it. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned. If you want to learn how you can get other people to fund your real estate investments, and not only like get them to do that, but also have them happy to do it and willing to do it, and to do
be it like, I'm next
Yeah.
in line. Like,
Yep.
call me and I'll give you my money. Call me.
So we'll tell you all those tips and tricks to get your foot in the door. And
Next week.
yeah, because we're out of time. All right.
on.
So tune in next Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll talk about private money lending, aka using other people's money. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you then.
All right. Good night, everybody.